wonderful day to all, especially to our creative writing students. This is Teacher April Semblante-Alcontin from Atty. Orlando S. RImando National High School, Maco North District. I will be your teacher for SPA Creative Writing Grade 7, and I am so excited to impart new learnings for today. So just be ready, for we are about to discover new knowledge about creative writing subject. So what are you waiting for? Grab your pen and paper and let's get started. Storytelling is common to every culture, since most people enjoy listening to stories. I believe everyone has stories to tell. They may be stories of experiences that the storyteller wants to share with others, or stories of ancestors who lived in different times and places. It is sometimes interesting to observe how stories can change with constant retelling. The basic plot remains the same, but the finer details gradually become more elaborate and exciting, and the characters develop colorful traits they may not have had when the story was first told. A lot of you have probably grown up with your parents reading you books or watching movies with you. Well, chances are, most of what they have read to you were folktale, myth, or legend. Now, do you have any idea about folktale, myth, and legend? How do these words differ from one another? Can you give me some elements of folktale, myth, and legend? Great! Your ideas are great. I am sure that this lesson for today is just easy for you. Creative writing has much to offer. Sometimes it is set to entertain and satisfy our artistic expression. This time around, I'd like to introduce to all our objectives that at the end of the lesson, you are expected to: first, define what is folktale, myth, and legend. Second, identify the elements of folktale, myth, and legend. And third, appreciate the importance of folktale, myth, and legend. Yes, you have heard it right. Today, we'll be studying the features or elements of folktale, myth, and legend. Now, let's look at what makes something a folktale, myth, and legend. Folktales were passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth, which is called oral tradition. The original author is usually unknown. Because they have been passed from generation to generation, there are often many versions of the same story. Usually, folktales involved animals who find themselves in unreal situations. Now, I will introduce to you some basic features or elements of folktale. First, traditional stories from a specific culture told orally over time, meaning they were passed on by the word of mouth. One person told it to another, they told it to another, and on and on. Usually, these stories were told by the elders of the culture and passed on to the younger generations in order to pass on the culture, their values, their stories, right to preserve the culture. Different cultures have different versions of the same story. Make sure you have this part underlined in your notes because this is kind of the main characteristic of a folktale. Another is the rule of 3. Items happen in sets of 3s or 7s, like the 3 characters, 3 events, 3 tests that the character must overcome. For example, Jack and the Beanstalk showed Jack climbing the beanstalk 3 times. The wicked stepmother visited Snow White in the forest 3 times before she finally got her to eat the apple. Just like that. And of course, folktale contains morals or lessons. The purpose of these stories is to pass on the morals and the values of a culture, and that's what the story is focused on. Another is characters are animals that act like humans, so animals that actually talk. A lot of times, they have animal characters that display human characteristics, and this is called personification. Depending on the culture and the region that they lived, those are the animals that were used in the story. Whatever animals were around them are the ones that they in turn used in the stories that they told. And for the setting, it is usually described easily and briefly, leaving the imagination to fill in the gaps. For example, folk tales take place in a cottage in the woods or in a magical kingdom, and the time is fantasy time, such as once upon a time or a long time ago. Folktale usually have themes of good versus evil. It is usually obvious in the story who the good characters are and who the bad characters are. Again, because the good ones have those kinds of characteristics that the culture values. A lot of them have happy endings. Since good is rewarded and evil is punished in the end, then tales have a happy ending. Example of folktale is The Turtle and the Monkey, or in Tagalog, Ang Pagong at Ang Matsing. This well-known folktale was first documented and illustrated by national hero Dr. Jose P. Rizal, a pioneer folklorist and anthropologist in 1886. Now, let us watch this video, The Story of the Turtle and the Monkey.
One day, Pagong the turtle and Maching the monkey were walking by the river. Then Maching saw a floating banana tree.
Look, a banana tree! Let's go get it, Pagong!
Since Maching was the one that saw the tree first, Maching insisted that he will take home the trunk that already had some leaves, thinking that it will soon bear fruit, while Pagong, he was given the part with the roots. They parted ways and planted the banana trees that they owned. Pagong planted his near the riverbank, while Maching planted his in the woods. Every day, they watered the plants. Days went by. Maching's plant died, the leaves withered, and the trunk decayed. Meanwhile, Pagong's plant slowly grew leaves and grew even bigger until it bore fruit. Maching came to Pagong and he wept. Pagong, my plant died. Pagong kindly answered, "Oh, poor Maching, don't be sad. Look at my plant. It has become a fruitful banana tree. If you help me gather the fruit, I will share my harvest with you."
Wow, really? Let me climb the tree for you then.
Maching answered excitedly. Once Maching reached the top of the tree, he greedily ate all of the bananas. Pagong shouted, "Hey, Maching, give me some." The naughty Maching answered,
No chance! It is all mine now!
Pagong was so angry, he began to stick many thorns on the tree trunk. After Maching felt full, Maching went down the tree. Not long after, he screamed in pain.
Ouch! Ouch! There are so many thorns! Pagong, you will pay for this!
Maching sat on the top of a coconut shell to remove the thorns. Then, the next thing he knew, Pagong bit his tail. Then Pagong hid under the coconut shell. In a rage, Maching lifted the coconut shell.
You will pay for what you have done to me. I will cook you now.
Pagong acted cool. Sounds like a plan. When you cook me, I will turn red and be more attractive.
Maching replied, "Ha! I know. What about if I just throw you in the river and let you drown there?"
Pagong pretended to be scared. No, not the river. Please, I will drown there. Maching threw Pagong into the river with vengeance. Once Pagong hit the water, he laughed. Maching, you slow-minded. Did you not know I live in water? Maching scratched his head in confusion and immediately regretted all of his actions.
The setting or the story happened one day in broad daylight in most likely a forest setting. The characters are animals. They are the turtle and the monkey who act like humans. This story contains moral lesson, which is that you are not greedy. Don't be greedy. Better to give than to retrieve. We need to share what we have with others, and God will bless us more. Do not be egotistical. So, that was an example of folktale. Next, we have myth. These are stories that attempt to explain why and how the world is the way it is. Every culture has its own myths and legends. Basic features or elements of myths. First, the universe and mankind. The subject of myths are usually the universe and mankind, and the main characters are often non-human. The main characters are gods, goddesses, or other superhuman heroes. They usually have these superhuman people, these gods and goddesses, that the story revolves around. It explains the world and beliefs or natural occurrences. The purpose of myth is to explain timeless questions like who made the world or who created the world, who were the first humans, and what happens when we die. And the natural occurrences are usually due to the actions of these gods and goddesses that the story revolves around. Of course, it has magic. It also has magical elements. Okay, now, let's watch a video about Igorot story of creation as an example of myth.
Igorot story of creation. In the beginning, there were no people on earth. Lumawig, the great spirit, came down from the sky and cut many reeds. He divided these into pairs, which he placed in different parts of the world. And then he said to them, "You must speak." Immediately, the reeds became people, and in each place was a man and a woman who could talk, but the language of each couple differed from that of others. Then, Lumawig commanded each man and woman to marry, which they did. By and by, there were many children, all speaking the same language as their parents. These, in turn, married and had many children. In this way, there came to be many people on earth. Now, Lumawig saw that there were several things which the people on earth needed to use. So he set to work to supply them. He created salt. and told the inhabitants of one place to boil it down and sell it to their neighbors. But these people could not understand the directions of the Great Spirit. And the next time he visited them, they had not touched the salt. Then he took it away from them and gave it to the people of a place called Mayinit. These did as he directed, and because of this, he told them that they should always be owners of the salt, and that the other peoples must buy of them. Then Lumawig went to the people of Bontok and told them to get clay and make pots. They got the clay, but they did not understand the molding, and the jars were not well shaped. Because of their failure, Lumawig told them that they would always have to buy their jars, and he removed the pottery to Samoki. When he told the people there what to do, they did just as he said, and their jars were well shaped and beautiful. Then the Great Spirit saw that they were fit owners of the pottery, and he told them that they should always make many jars to sell. In his way, Lumawig taught the people and brought to them all the things which they now have.
How did Lumawig created a man and a woman? Lumawig is the greatest of all spirits. Descending from the sky, he cut up reeds into pairs and placed them in various places of the world. He created the Igorot and takes great interest in them. He taught them how to overcome the forces in nature, how to plant and reap. In fact, he taught them everything they know. And that was an example of myth, a story that explains timeless questions like who created the world, who were the first humans, and the main characters are gods and goddesses. Let's move on to legend. Legends are usually about heroes and their daring adventures. The heroes are admired for their bravado, strength, wit, and most importantly, their sense of justice. The following are some of the basic features or elements of legend. Traditional tales from a specific culture told orally over time. Told is a matter of historical fact. So people tell like, yes, this actually happened, but cannot be verified. Believed to be true by the culture from which it originated. But again, it can't be checked. Usually, these are very old stories, so a lot of times, actual records of these people don't exist. They have heroes who perform great deeds with strength and intelligence. Make sure you have this part underlined because that's one of the biggest defining characteristics of a legend. These heroes have these values. The strengths are something that the culture deems as important. That is why that story revolves around that. Sometimes, the heroes' exploit are exaggerated to make the story more interesting or convincing, explaining how something came to be. It explains why something is the way it is, and that's usually something in nature that the story explains how it came to be. Example of legends. Why does fish have scales? The girl who turned into a fish. This classic legend tells a story of a girl who turned into a fish. Furthermore, this also contains other classic Philippine legends based on watery tales. The story of the piña. This Philippine legend tells the story of how the pineapple fruit got so many eyes. Another example of legend is Robin Hood. He is an outlaw who fights against the evil King John. Robin Hood and his men rob the rich and give to the poor. Alright, Those were the famous examples of legend. Hooray! What an amazing learning we have for today about folktale, myth, and legend with their features or elements. Now, it's time to know whether you have learned something on the presentation. It's assessment time. Before we start, please get a notebook or a paper and a ball pen for you to answer the questions that I will be asking you. I will read each question twice, so listen carefully, okay? Choose the letter of the best answer. Write the chosen letter on the separate sheet of paper. Number 1. These are stories that attempt to explain why and how the world is the way it is. Again, these are stories that attempt to explain why and how the world is the way it is. A. Folktale. B. Myth. C. Legend. D. Fairy tale. Are you done? That's right. The answer is letter B, myth. Number 2. Which is not a feature or element of a folktale? Again, which is not a feature or element of a folktale? A. Characters are animals that act like humans, so animals that talk. B. Usually have themes of good versus evil. C. A lot of them have happy endings. D. Explaining how something came to be. Are you finished? You are really awesome. Yes, you are right. The answer is letter D, explaining how something came to be. Number 3. They have heroes who perform great deeds with strength and intelligence. Again, they have heroes who perform great deeds with strength and intelligence. A. Folktale. B. Myth. C. Legend. D. Fairy tale. I am sure that this question is just easy for you. You're brilliant. The answer is letter C, legend. Number 4. Main characters are gods and goddesses or other superhuman heroes. Again, the main characters are gods and goddesses or other superhuman heroes. A. Folktale. B. Myth. C. Legend. D. Fairy tale. Are you through? You are really incredible. The answer is letter B, myth. And the last question. These stories are usually about heroes and their daring adventures. The heroes are admired for their bravado, strength, wit, and most importantly, their sense of justice. Again, these stories are usually about heroes and their daring adventures. The heroes are admired for their bravado, strength, wit, and most importantly, their sense of justice. A. Folktale. B. Myth. C. Legend. D. Fairy tale. Finished? You've got it right. You are genius. The answer is letter C, legend. Great job! We're already done with our assessment. It seems that you have really learned a lot from our lesson. For today's lesson, we have learned the features or elements of folktale, myths, and legends. Students, I would like you to remember that these stories became part of our tradition and culture. As such, we need to respect, care for, and give importance to these stories. With this in mind, the best thing we could do to preserve these stories is to pass them on to future generations. That's it for our lesson for today about the features or elements of folktale, myths, and legend. I hope that you have learned a lot and you will be able to share your learnings to others. Have a great day, everyone, and keep safe. This has been your teacher, Teacher April Semblante-Alcontin of Atty. Orlando S. RImando National High School, Maco North District. Saying, dito sa TV Eskwela, sa pag-aaral, sama-sama. Bye-bye!